All right, so I have shared some images today, which we are going to convert into illustration directly with ink. So today we will not be using pencil and making a rough sketch of the shapes and then filling them up. We are just going to start sketching directly with ink. Now, this is a technique often used to steady your line. There is something called gestural drawing. Have you heard of this before? So,
No,
gestural drawing is the drawing that is made in quick seconds by looking at your subject moving. So, for example,
which
if
one
you
is
are
that? So gestural is that?
gestural. So if you
Okay.
are at a public place and there are lots of
Mhm.
people moving, you you have to train your eye and hand to work in tandem. So the eye will see something and the hand has to then trace the line while your eyes are still on the subject. So you would have these line drawings almost like wireframe drawings that of people walking or running or sitting or animals in different postures. All of that is gestural drawing.
Like,
So
is this the same as continuous line drawing?
it can be
No.
that. It can be.
Okay.
So you can do it that way, or you can just make brief lines that create the
Mm-hmm.
overall form. So it just gives you an
Got it.
idea of what this
Mm-hmm.
person might be or what the object might be. And
Mm-hmm.
this is mostly done with moving objects. So you can't do gestural drawings with still life because it's not
Got it.
moving.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Today, what we're going to do is a slightly aligned but advanced version of gestural drawing, where the line will flow as if you're doing gestural, but you
Mm-hmm.
will be allowed to make more details because our subject is going to be static. We will give
Mm-hmm.
enough time. So, I mean, for all practical purposes, it is still life. Eh,
Yeah.
but the line should not look like it is static. I'm going to demonstrate one picture so you get to see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, now I'll set an intent for us because then that will help you to free up your mind regarding this exercise. We are not looking at creating very realistic pictures with this. A realistic image means that we would have to create exact proportions and texture and light and shadow and everything so that the object can look at best a black and white photograph of the reference image. But we are not doing that. We will be making lines which look very casual, very energetic and dynamic to make a representative image. So if we have a squirrel, the squirrel will look like a squirrel. It's not going to look like a fish or a bull or whatever, but it is only going to be an impression. It's just going to be an interpretation of a photograph into lines with ink. That's how you want to look at it. So a few things will go awry and you have to just let them, because what I want you to experience is that those few things do not make a difference to the larger picture. They are just part of the texture and they will be absorbed. What it does, however, allow for is an expression of your line. So eventually, you want to have something that is unique about your work. And that uniqueness does not come until you have stepped on things that you are not comfortable with. So, those places of discomfort are where you will find something new or something original that you can grab onto and then bring that into your practice. Now, all this just sounds theory, but why I want to explain this beforehand is because if something like that occurs, if you are uncomfortable with a few lines, if you feel this is the point, I wish I was working in pencil so I could erase it, those are those uncomfortable places that you're stepping on. So welcome them. You don't have to actively identify that, oh, this is something I must keep in mind. Don't work at it like that. It's not very methodical, it is very instinctive. It is just the experience that your system has to go through, and eventually you will absorb that which is good and reject that which isn't. So I'm going to just run through the images that I've shared with you. All these images I have picked out from Pinterest, but I will be linking them in the video description. So at a later date, if you want to go to the source, they should be there. Okay, so we have a squirrel, we have a rhino, a beautiful cat, fish, and I think we've covered the entire, except insects, we've covered the entire animal kingdom. That's
Yeah.
because I wanted to give you a variety of textures and creatures also. So we have something which has got scales, a lot of interesting texture that you can identify. A bit of
Insects and
scales.
birds,
Oh, there's
right?
no birds as well. Yeah, yeah, there's no birds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then here we have fur, here we have a lot of folds, and here we have fur again with a lot of fluid lines. So I'm going to show you the squirrel first. Don't do it with me. I would like you to observe this first, and then I'll give you enough time to draw your own. While I'm saying that these lines have to be made in a very dynamic manner, they don't need to be made very fast. You can give some time to think about how that line should go. So you can move your pen over the paper without contact and begin to see some invisible lines,
Mhm.
then make the line in that space or make those adjustments. So just watch out for those movements of my hand while I make this picture, okay?
Okay.
Now we are going to fit all 5 pictures on this page. So in terms of composition, you have the freedom to choose what area you want to fit things in. If there are any subjects that have got a face and an eyes, and they're pointing in one particular direction, it's a good system to point all the faces towards the center of the page. That's how you bring focus to the center. But this is just one suggestion. It is not a hard and fast rule. Nothing is a hard and fast rule. So when you are placing these elements, what at least I look for is how they can be juxtaposed so that their shape and the negatives that they leave behind around them can be filled very nicely. So you don't want to make a squirrel over here and then you want to make something that is poking into its bum over here, and then there's a big blank space over here. So you don't want any of that. So I'll probably make the squirrel here. Then I will make the rhino is looking forward. So let's make the rhino in the center. Then you have the fish, which can be made on top. So this very nice fluid action of the fish with the fluid tail of the squirrel can come in this place. The cat is again looking towards the center, so we can have the cat come somewhere like this. And then
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
have the lizard, that's its face is again over here, and it can point in this direction. This is just a loose understanding. Once we are seeing these creatures, then we can start drawing them. This is again something that you'll notice a lot of artists do. They spend a lot of time on blank paper figuring out how the composition should turn out, which beginners don't do. And then they will say, "Oh, but you're an artist." No, that's not how it works. Planning works for everyone, whether it is an artwork, whether it is travel, whether it's banking, savings. Planning is worked always on blank papers. Okay, so here we have our squirrel. Now, a note before you begin, just check the viscosity of your ink. If you're
Mm.
using liquid ink very often, if you haven't used it for a few days, it is going to dry up. So, take a little bit of water and dilute it to some extent. I've not used this ink for a day and a half, and already it's gone to half its size.
I
That's
have it this kind of a container.
sealed
I,
container.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. Like
yeah, so you
medicine.
only need to check if it is liquid enough to draw with. It very
Okay.
well could be, but sometimes even through sealed containers, this evaporation can occur. So just
Mm-hmm.
test it out. Draw a line with it like we done in the first class. Look at how
Mm-hmm.
thick it is, gloopy it is, or then just add a few drops at a time to bring it back to normal drawing consistency. Okay, Archana, how are you doing?
Hi Aditi, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, my laptop I open only for your class. So it actually takes a while to open
Okay.
WhatsApp and everything.
Okay.
Is it,
I should
this is your
actually
personal laptop,
prepare
is it?
before I do it. Because
Yeah.
sometimes reboots. Like actually, I keep this open. Like last time, suddenly in midnight, it actually made a loud noise. It looked like a fire alarm.
What?
Thereafter, I was thinking it was a fire alarm, and I could see that it's my laptop is beeping such loud. So then I started shutting down my laptop every
Ah,
time whenever I open, and every time when I open, I actually it takes a while.
okay, okay. Okay, now that you know, we can plan better for it, I suppose.
Yeah, next time I will log in much before
No problem, no problem.
5 minutes.
All right, so our squirrel is going to come here. So its shape is like this. It's got a nice round belly. It's got a triangular face, some arms, and a tail that goes up like so. So the drawing should be done in lines which are like this. They are not really very fine lines, but let your eye move on the animal, but the line can be drawn almost like a scribble. It can also be transparent, and I keep my hand very far from the tip because I want the line to flow. And this is, I think, how you can imagine gestural lines would be. So, as you can tell, I'm not really aiming for an absolutely perfect picture, am I? This is by no means going to look like a photograph of the squirrel. But do you see how within about a minute or so, I've been able to capture more or less its shape, its proportions, and to some extent the textures that its body exhibits. Now, once this is done, now I can go into some details. And this also is an option. You don't really need to do it, but I really enjoy making these details. So when I make these extra lines, all they land up doing is making almost like a finalized version of the lines that I've drawn before. The lines that are before start becoming absorbed in this, even if they are not needed. Those are lines which just will just be there. They won't interfere with the final picture really. Now, after last week's class, you will have a general idea of how to create these different kinds of lines. If I were to make this a very formal, accurate, hyper realistic picture, I would go very detailed, very deep, do a proper cross hatching and whatnot. But I want to keep a certain casual sense to this picture. So I am going to just continue to build with these lines, and as I come to whatever feature needs defining, I will define it. Now, these fingers and all can be a big pain At some point, we will be doing this in much more detail. So you can just make one shape. It's like an outline of the entire shape, and be done with that. And use the lines to make these directional texture lines. So this will start looking more squirrel-like. And you'll notice that all the information that you need is there. Once these are done, then if you want, you can start enhancing some features by making fat lines like this, by pressing the nib down. Now, this is something that we don't do with pencils, because pencils cannot give us these fat lines, and this is where the dynamic line of a dip pen can come in handy. So wherever I have a little shadow in the tail, I can just make one fat line, and that's it. That will be shadow and texture, everything built in together. Alright, do you want to give it a shot? I'll continue to build this up. You can try drawing this yourselves and see if you're enjoying it. how's it going?
Aditi,
Yeah,
what do I do if the proportions are wrong? I mean, they're pretty off.
let me have a look.
Like the face is much wider.
That's okay. You can either make the see, okay. Let me just explain one thing. You notice how your lines have gone and become very firm lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
We want to avoid making those firm lines because once you've committed to a firm line like you've made for the back or the body of the
yeah,
animal,
yeah.
there's no fluidity to that. So
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
needs to flow a little bit more. But don't worry about that at this point. Now you know how one kind of line works. We will move on to the next subject, and there you will learn how to maybe flow the line a little more.
Okay.
Archana, how are you doing?
Huh. I'm not doing that great. Aditi, it turned out something weird.
I know, I know. Don't worry about that. I mean, we want that to happen. This is going to be the process. But by
Something
the
like this.
yeah, let's see. Um,
Sure, sure, Archana.
yeah,
It is so funny.
yeah. So again, I feel that you're trying to control the line. Just go over those lines and avoid making lines which are like that, which are staggered. Just go and make a full line and then come back and adjust it and keep adjusting it and see if that works for you because that is the process. We want to do that. We want to do it in that manner. Okay, let's try
And
this one more time. Just abandon the squirrel for the moment and let's try making the fish or squirrel might be a little wet. Okay, let's try making the fish. So first and foremost, I want you to visualize the shapes before you draw. So once you've drawn them, once you visualize the shape, it's like if I draw this line while I'm making the line in the next few milliseconds, it's gone right from the brain. It's right now I can see just a little bit while I'm drawing it, I can see where the line might be. But if I remove my hand, I don't know where it might have been. What I'm trying to say is that if you see the shape of the fish like this, when your hand is drawing it, but when you're drawing it physically, if you're going to start drawing it like this, you lose that little, what is it? It's the impression in your eyes of where the rest of the fish is going to come. So you need to move
can you say that
faster.
again,
Yeah,
Aditi?
so
What was that?
yeah, let me explain. This is a little different. Like when I make a line in the air or with my finger on paper, immediately after I make it, you can see that line, right? Even though it's invisible, you can see the path that my finger made and know that one line has to be made over here. But if I remove my finger and then I have to draw, I do the same thing with my pen. I know where the line is and where it is going. But if I start drawing the line like this very slowly, I could go in the wrong direction. You get what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Yeah.
even if we are trying, even if we are drawing the lines slowly, they need to be drawn fully. Once you've drawn the full line, if you feel that it's become too round, you can make an adjustment. So, based on that feedback, you can make an adjustment. But if you're afraid of feedback at all, you're hoping that you're going to shoot out an arrow and pray that it lands. That rarely ever happens. So now for the fish, I'm going to do the same thing. Part of the fish might get obscured because of the squirrel. That part we will just put behind the squirrel's tail. So let's see, I have like the body of the fish. It's somewhat like this. This shape is actually nothing, but the line has movement. I'm adjusting my line as I go along because as I'm drawing this line, I can see what might be working, what might not be working. So making minor adjustments, I will be able to get a shape that's better and better. Now for the fins, you can just draw these lines coming outward. And start filling up that space. The fin that comes from below is going to go behind the squirrel's tail. So let it go, doesn't matter. And there are lots of these textural lines that you can make, which you will not make like this, because your fish is going to look like it's got fur. We don't want that. Now the lines of the fin that go up, don't draw them coming from top to bottom. Here is where a little bit of an uncomfortable drawing requirement comes in. You should ideally try to draw a line from the source to outside, because then you know exactly what direction, what length it ought to be. Now here again we have a very dramatic tail fin flipping to the side. I'm just looking at all the lines that the fin is creating, and first drawing these almost like action lines and then giving a silhouette of the shapes finally. And then of course we have a very soft, polite fin. And I can enhance these by making some lines bold. That's again optional, you don't have to do it. And there's hardly any visible texture. There are only a few darker lines where there are shadows in these shapes, so you have to do the same thing as we did in our Van Gogh picture. Create a texture for just marking the darker areas, and then you can spend some time in making the eye. I just love making eyes, so that's a little bit of my weakness, I would say. And I still would give the fish's eye a little bit of a highlight, though there is no such highlight in the eye of a fish. And do a very casual texture where there's a deeper color, because some scaly texture is visible there. Alright, do you want to give it a shot? Okay, so now when you're drawing this, Malika, I would like you to hold your book and just check your posture. Your shoulders should not be rising too high, because that means that you have the weight of your body would be on your elbows as you're seated, and those heavy elbows will not move your hand freely. So if your table is a bit high, then sit back and hold the book on your lap at an angle so that your hand can move freely. Let me show you how that might work. When we are normally writing, our hands are down here and we can sit like this and write, or we can sit like this and write because we are making very short lines. But when we are drawing, our hand should be free to do this. The elbow should be off table. Now, if you're not able to do that, you can sit back, keep your book on your lap or against the table. But again, don't let your elbow get arrested by a seat handle. Make sure that it moves very freely. At best, we are making lines which are maybe 3 or 4 inches long, so it's not like you have to throw your hand out too much. But even for that, if there is a restriction, then you will be limited to just making short lines, adjusting your hand and making another short line, and that could get in the way of that free flowing line that we're looking for.
Got it.
How's it going? Is it slightly better this time?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay. It is better. I'm going to show you in a bit.
Okay.
But I mean, not too good, but it's better than the last one.
Okay, let's see. All right. Yeah, much better, much better. This is great. I like this. Let's see, Archana. Very good. This is so much better than the squirrel, Archana.
Yeah.
Good. So you're able to
No, I
feel
was
the line.
also like struggling with the pen and ink. I'm not used to this,
Yeah.
and yeah, I need to like practice it a bit.
Yeah, so a few things to again remember about pen, this kind of dip pen is that it does not really move as freely as a ballpoint pen would. So you have to make sure that you're holding it properly. When you're pressing it down, it is pressed in such a way that the curve is upward, not sideways. Because if you press that way, all you successfully do is damage the nib. So in order to make it split, you just need to make sure that it's rounded upward and it splits like this much easier. All right, let's try the next one. Now this one we can do well, no, I'm going to show you this one again. I keep thinking that we can do one together, but maybe in a bit. So I want to show you how to make this rhinoceros, but I'm going to use a different tool, and you can use a paintbrush to do this. This is a Pentel Feud brush pen. I will share the link with you. This is, I think this is refillable. There is ink in this chamber, and it's got a very nice, very fine tip. I think this is used for Japanese calligraphy or Chinese calligraphy where they need a certain the tip needs to have a certain
Thickness.
strength. No, it has to have a certain strength to make almost like these niche like marks. But what we like for illustration is the fact that it is very, very pliable. And I'll show you how it works. It's like watching a ballet dancer on paper. It's really fun. So
So it's a Sakura brush pen. Would that work with this one?
it
Or
does
no?
work to some extent, but it does not have the flexibility as this pen does. You'll see it. I'm sure at some point you'll buy both. But this one works a little differently. So let me demonstrate. Again, don't draw with me, but imagine that this is a paintbrush, like a number six, a number seven, or even a longer brush which has a fine tip with which you can draw something like this. Okay, so again, flatten out the rhino because this chap is now facing us.
So this one you're using, I mean, if we were to use, we would use black watercolor, right? And
Yes.
not
No,
the,
you can
yeah.
use ink. No, no, you can use ink. So what I'm doing is making much of the texture by just rubbing my brush tip very finely along the that particular shape. Almost in a like a circular movement. Back and forth, back and forth. Now, the advantage in the case of the pen, which might not be the same with the brush, is that I don't have to break my drawing to dip my pen into any ink. So I can continuously just keep drawing these lines without any interference or no, without a break. So that gives me more. Uh, what is the right word I'm looking for? I don't need to take my eye off the subject. And we do the same thing once I have drawn all these lines, then I can go back in and make details. So I just need to press the pen a little bit to refill the tip of the brush with more wet ink.
So this time you're holding this brush pretty, I mean, even from the beginning, you were holding it pretty close to the, like a normal, like how you would,
Correct. And
yeah.
that's only because if I don't apply adequate pressure, I won't be able to draw. Like from here, I won't have
Yeah.
enough pressure to draw the lines, but you can definitely draw even holding it there.
Hmm. So,
And some of these effects that we get now, the dry brush effect,
yeah.
that gives you a texture without even having to do
Yeah.
anything. Like I can instantly get this texture of this leathery surface
Hmm.
of his skin so much better. It's so dramatic.
Hmm.
Now, also this paint is not waterproof. So
Hmm.
that could be a disadvantage or an advantage, depends upon how your outlook to life is. This, if I just move a little bit of water onto these lines, I get this wonderful blending that just makes my picture so much more dramatic. I don't have to draw any extra shadows, maybe no textures also. So to get this effect, definitely you can use our watercolors to make the lines first, and then with slightly thicker paint, and then make these marks using just water. And if you have any other ink, you can use that also for drawing. Any ink that is not waterproof, you can make the drawing with that, with a brush, and then just spread the ink to create. Uh,
So the drawing you need to make with the regular ink, right? The Indian ink.
that's what I'm
Or
saying.
no?
You can make the drawing with the India ink, but that will not give you this effect, and that's perfectly okay. We can get this effect by just using watercolor on top of the lines. We are going to do that on top of these animals. So once you've drawn this, just leave it be, and we'll come back to it and paint it after we have finished these two animals. But if you have any other ink which is not water resistant, you can make the drawing with that ink. Say, for example, you have fountain pen ink. You can get this kind of result if you use fountain pen ink, draw the animal, and then use water to wet that ink and reactivate it.
Navati
Yeah.
turned out this, but it's not so great. It's good.
Okay, let's just see how it is turned out.
It's
Oh
not good.
no, this is good. This is good. I like this. We are not looking to make it look perfect, but you do realize that this is looking like some kind of rhino and definitely not a frog or a bird. So that's
Yeah,
that's good enough to start with.
it looks like an elephant, I guess.
Yeah, okay. But there's this story that I often tell my students about when I had this kid in my class. He must have been about 7 years old, and I was showing that entire batch how to make lions. He was very disappointed at the end because he said his picture does not look like a lion. And I asked him why, what does it look like? He said, my lion looks like a cat. And he hated that. And everyone, of course, was teasing him because children can be incredibly cruel. So I said, you know what, look at it this way. You're the only one in the class now knows how to make a cat. While everyone else has made a lion, you have made a cat. And none of them know how to do that. So one against so many, what do you feel? And he instantly just lit up and he said, okay, fine, now I'm okay with this. But this is just a matter of expectation and setting or being so hardlined about that expectation that we forget to notice what we have achieved at all. So, from your first, second to third painting, you may not have got the accurate animal, but there is something else that you might have achieved. One is you were probably quicker than the first animal. Your line is now a little less scared. You're not trying to make something look like something anymore. You're just making the line flow a little more than it was in the first picture, definitely. Maybe in the second and third, it is pretty much the same, but it's becoming comfortable in this with this movement, and that's exactly what we want. Okay, now the third picture is a technique that I want to show you where we spread the ink a little bit like how we've done the rhino, but this one is a little more dramatic. You will have probably seen many pictures like these. In this case, now we're drawing the cat, and we are first going to make the features of the cat using a brush. You can use a thin brush if you want, you can use a fat brush. So I'm going to make a few things which are like the face and the ears of the cat, and then I'm going to put a little bit of water and drop some paint in that wet water and allow the paint to spread very organically on its own. So what are the shapes we have? We have a small rounded shape on the right, and then a bigger rounded shape on the right, and then we have this tail that comes down like this very dramatically. Those are the lines which are really sharp. And then of course we have the face, which is like a bracket, one of those curved brackets that we used to make in algebra, that kind. So we are just going to make that shape. The shape of the ear is just a curve pointing towards the top, and then we're going to do a short line, a short curve, a long curve, and add water to that edge. So let me just show you how it's done. When you're using brush with ink, first wet the brush because you don't want that ink to go into this part of the shaft and dry up. Otherwise, if that happens, then your brush is just going to be shocked all the time. So always wet your brushes when working with waterproof colors. I'm using a thin number 2 brush. I want you to see this. Don't draw with me. Just observe the lines and observe the shapes. This part can be done fairly slowly. Simple S curve and then a C curve coming down. This is good enough. And for the eye, you will just draw a shape like this. Okay, it's like an A shape that's leaning a little to the left. Now I'm not going to draw the front of the ear, but I'm going to draw the ear like this. Make a curve for the head that is about the same size as the front. So don't make that too large. And this can be a little round also. Now I'm making a conservative oval shape here, but you can always extend it outward if you feel that looks better. Bring it all the way down. So now we've got our shape ready. In this, we will use a fat brush and add more ink. So I'm wetting the brush and I'm just going to add some ink towards the back. Now some of this ink is just jumping about, let it do its thing, it's fine. Alright. And now while this is wet, I'm going to wet a certain section away from the ink. I'm not making contact yet. Here are the legs. And now I can make contact. And for the tail, I'm not even making contact there. Make it very dramatic. Here I'm now going to put the ink in the tail afterwards and let that flow. So once these shapes are made, you can see how beautifully the ink just takes over. It's like, yes, give me this opportunity, I am going to kill it. And if you feel the need to, you can expand the lines a little more, drop a little more ink in the right places. But I want you to see how this is just a mere interpretation of that cat. It is not, don't try to make it too much like the original picture, because it will kill the fun that this ink has had. So few places you may not have the ink, you may not have depth, but this overall effect is so beautiful, you don't want to compromise on that. Okay, do you want to give it a shot?
So, so when you started, you didn't put any water on the paper, right? You did the
No.
black marks first. Okay, I just.
Yes. Oh, great. Very nice, Archana. Let me just pin and see. Huh? Hold it back. Very nice. So I can see your hand is moving in one particular direction. Let me just try and demonstrate. Normally, when you are working, I think your hand moves in a almost like a zigzag direction. So what I want you to do is stop making that movement. Make one of those lines at a time and change that movement. That movement is, I think it might also creep up when you're doing texturing or just drawing. If you want to show some kind of texture, your probable go-to is just draw these zigzag lines. That is, I think that's the worst line in drawing. You have to just rid yourself of that. Once that is gone, then you will be able to make these individual strokes. So you'll make the basic shape, and then you will look at what texture you see on the fur and then make those lines slowly. Don't be in a rush to make that. All right, now before we proceed, yeah, Malika, you're done?
Yeah, I'm done, but I think it's something to do with the paper. I'm using a Bristol paper. Again, the hippo liner is all over the place.
Uh-huh.
The cat, so it's not really spreading that
It's
much.
not spreading because you probably need more water. But
Oh,
that's
okay,
okay. Yeah, that's okay. Next time, maybe we can hydrate the paper a little more.
okay.
You might also need more ink. So, more water and more ink. Is your
Yeah,
paper like 200 GSM or something?
270, I think mine. 270.
Yeah, so imagine that is twice the thickness as my paper. So it is going to need that much more liquid to become saturated enough to then
Yeah,
the ink. But now we know.
yeah.
All right, now let's do a little bit of painting with watercolor of these two, the squirrel and the fish. So, in painting animals after you have done this kind of drawing, you have to again, you can rather enjoy creating a sense of this coloring rather than making it too accurate. So, as far as the squirrel is concerned, the colors are pretty regular. You have some kind of a brown, you have a little bit of light here and there, but you have the opportunity also to color it in a more dramatic, unexpected fashion. Because after all, a painting should be appreciated as a painting, not merely as an attempt at replicating the photograph. So you can change the colors and make them more brilliant to some extent. Or if you want, just change the whole color and make a blue colored squirrel if you want to. That if that is your world. The application of the painting of the paint should also be merely staining of paper. So we are not drawing, we are not embedding the color in paper. I'm using a gamboge for the face, and see how I just lay my brush down on paper and instantly the paper will grab it. This is orange, and to that I'm adding burnt sienna. So I want the colors to be seen as contributors to the painting. You know, there is a uh, certain spontaneity to the drawing, to the quality of drawing. So you don't want to kill that completely by making colors that are very stark and boring. So you can throw in a few colors, you can make some very dramatic textures like that, and interpret the subject in terms of this medium. So the exercise is to have fun with these tools, not to use them for making copies. Now I'm going to try something really dramatic. I'm using a cobalt blue, and I'm going to throw that in certain sections to create shadows instead of a black or a deeper brown, and see how the blue does contribute to that. It's not, I mean, I'm not doing this because I like blue and that's why I want blue everywhere, but the interaction of blue with the other colors gives me that dark shadow that I need, and that's good enough for my painting. But when you look at the painting and you see this whole riot of paint alone, that gives you the joy of enjoying this as a painting. And as you go forward, you should be able to enjoy the spirit of that medium wholly. Now we can do the same thing for the fish. Here we need even lighter colors. So I'm just dabbing a little bit into crimson and only using very light brush strokes like this. Don't use white. Classic mistake made by a lot of people is to try and translate the colors or making them light by using white, but white is a very opaque color, so you'll end up making a very clunky looking illustration. Very light orange, just touching the orange with a lot of water in my brush, and I get this transparency. Oh, I love it. And if there are accidental flows of paint from one to another area, just welcome it. Somewhere they must write that watercolor is not for control freaks. Watercolor is like working with really tiny kids who do their own thing and bring their own joy. And the last thing you want to do is kill their joy by telling them to sit down and behave like adults. At least your first brush stroke should be very free. Now you'll notice that they're not unthoughtful or thoughtless. What is the right word here? Unthoughtful. Okay, that's a new word. So there is some thought given to where the color must be, and the brush has moved in those areas very consciously, but it's not with very small strokes trying to control every little bit of that area. So if I were to zoom in to this picture, I might still enjoy those color pigments dancing with each other very spontaneously.
Aditi, these look more like we have these textbooks, right? Or some kind of comic books where they just have some outline and some splash of colors. It looks more like that.
Is it? Okay. Hmm. I should look for these comic books.
It looks good on the books, I guess.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
I'm saying it looks more on like some of the comic stories, right?
Hmm.
We do some, I'm not getting those names, but yeah, there are some comic stories like where you draw those characters and don't like have a full colors, just have some splash of colors.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, small story books like for
Correct.
kids.
Yeah. Malika, hold the book. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
it's
possible
done.
because they do use a lot of this kind of splatter of colors. Yeah, one second, let me have a look. Oh, nice. I like it. How do you like it, Archana?
I liked it, Aditi. They're really good.
They're looking
Yeah.
very nice. Yeah, very loose.
I like those colors.
Yeah,
Sketches are not great, but I like those colors.
yeah, they've turned out really good. I like how it's turned out. Yeah.
This is not great at all, but um,
Oh, so it's a paper. You need much
I
more.
think so.
You
Yeah.
need fatter brushes and more water. That's all. But you're moving in the right direction. That's good. Okay. Now the last part. This one we can do together. This is our lizard. You can do it in whichever one of these tools you want to, and then you can paint it. Now I think you should be able to do it even without instruction. So I just want you to try once without any guidance, and then give me some feedback about what you felt missing and what you might need to, or where you felt you were lost, so then I can help you there while we are still in class. Okay, now in this case, when we are making these scales, I would like you to try making these scales without breaking it into a texture, like a very formal, scalloped texture like that. That'll be very boring. So mark out the large areas like these. Of course, that won't need the texture, but the space around it, you can create a one of these pen textures that looks like scales, but it does not have to be those scales exactly. You know what I mean? Okay, just a quick tip for if your drawing is going beyond your page, let it go fully. Either at one point you decide that I'm not going to go beyond that line and don't go there, or if it is going, don't stop it. So don't try to make the legs short just so that it fits inside the page. Just let it go. There are a few other batches that have made birds. So if you want to make birds, I'll just share those also. Or you can just go to the YouTube channel page, go through the different playlists. There are playlists for each class. There's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, and you can check on those playlists if there are birds. You should be able to see that in the description or also on the page, on the thumbnail. So if you get the time, then you can watch those also.
Aditi,
Yeah. Oh,
um,
let's see.
just not too great, but this fish and the chameleon, I did it the way uh, you know you suggested, like holding the book and keeping my hands free. I
Huh?
think that really helped.
Oh, good. Okay, okay, great. There we go. This is actually one of my most favorite mediums. And I say that about all the mediums that I use because it's like if you're confronted with that one child who says, "Am I your favorite, Mama?" And then you say, "Of course, you're my favorite." I love working with ink, but also because there is um, there is that whole nature of ink itself, where your drawing looks like a finished drawing and very dramatic, very forceful, that it can it can be an illustration by itself without having to depend on pencil or watercolor. That is what I like. It can have its own drama. There's a lot of texture and all possible, but also it is so modest. It does not really have too many things to offer, and yet it can do so much for you. The contrast is great. Just drawing with that tool on paper and getting that dark line itself is so rewarding. So in all of these pictures, after the paint has dried, you can do some more details. Like for example, you could make some dark patches on the squirrel. Like these make the eyes more dramatic. Fill in more depth.
Aditi, I have a question.
Yes.
The chameleon thing.
Uh-huh.
So there is an actual shadow in the picture.
Yes.
So how do you do that? I mean, do you do hatching? Like what do we do to do the actual
For
shadow in the
yeah, so first for the shadows that are in the on the I guess skin, you can do hatching, of course.
no, not on the skin. Like on the like under the neck.
Yeah, this
Uh,
part, right?
Like the real it's like a shadow cast by the
Yes.
the head on the
Yeah, so you can make these shapes,
uh-huh.
and you can actually just make
Um,
hatched shadow in this manner as well.
doesn't that look flat? I mean, because I remember you said that like for something that has a like a shape, like a cylinder, you actually do like a contouring.
Yeah, but
Yeah, so
this won't look flat because the shadow is not flat also. It has undulations, it has certain it has two, three different shades to it, this shadow itself. So you can keep adding and
uh-huh,
creating those lines of depth
uh-huh.
even with just lines. But it's still lines. See?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I continue to do this throughout,
Mm-hmm.
then these lines then start talking to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Got it?
definitely.
So you can't make it in isolation.
Right.
And then of course you can go over the texture that you've made of the scales. There will be some texture here. Can you see how everything is now coming
Yeah.
together?
Yeah.
That's it. That's how you do it. Okay? Let's see Archana's. Oh, nice.
So, Archana,
I felt something, but yeah.
It's good. It's good.
yeah. I'm daring to show mine. It's not good at all. Still,
It's
I'm
like I
weird.
told you, it's you have to, let's see. Yeah, this is a toughie, this topic, but you've done a good enough job, yeah. But only after you've done it fully will you know where you
Yeah.
can. I mean, using these lines as landmarks, you say, okay, I turned too soon. I need to turn a little later. That's the
Yeah.
only way you do it. You have to experience it and then get it out of your system.
Yeah. Agreed.
All
Okay.
right, so next week we will be doing doodle art. We'll be doing partly with the pen and partly with our micron pens. So if you've got a 0.2 and a 0.5, those should work.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Aditi.
See you next
Yeah.
week. Good
Yep.
night.
Yeah. Good night. Bye.